Another week, another Family Matters. Kevin Peterson, Jay Staples. Kevin, how are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Well, my mom would always never take well. Like, is well below, we in our family, well was be below good. Is that the same in your life?
Uh,
I'm
no,
just
I
making that
think
up,
good.
actually. We never really
No,
had so.
I think good is kind of the cheesy answer, honestly. To be like,
My go-to is fine.
yeah, right. So that's why I'm saying well. So I'm not fine. I'm not good. When someone's like in therapy, when someone to me says, "I'm like, how are you? I'm good." I'm like, what does that mean? What's good? And they're just like, oh God, I hate you. You
Yeah.
know.
My mom started doing that. So, anyway. Well,
Yeah, I get it.
we do this show to the best of our ability every week. We answer questions, kind of dig deeper into what's going on, kind of ask and answer questions that most families or people are thinking but afraid to ask. But then we do our best to stump Kevin. But anyway,
Let's
it's
do
been a
it.
long week. It just feels like it's been like 3 months since I've seen you last. It's only been a week. So
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, it's that time of year though, man. It's that time of year.
the holidays.
Ugh, things get a little funny.
Well, all right. Well, so let's get right into it. And there was a question, and it's always been on my forefront of my brain. I don't know if that's the saying or not, but and I was doing my scrolling after morning meditation, like I always do, and beloved John Lieberman of Visions, adolescents out in
Love
California.
me, the John. Believe me.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
and he did a little video, and I want to get into it because I think a lot of families it would hit straight to their heart chords. And what he was kind of outlining was, you call a mom, you call a dad, whatever it may be, and he was saying like, you ask how the parent, mom in this case, whatever, how are you doing, and they follow up with well, that all depends on how Johnny's doing. How is Johnny doing? And when redirected, paraphrasing now is, and it happens all the time. You see it all the time. I mean, preaching to the choir, but I think it's interesting kind of question, and it goes to the heart of, and then when redirected, well, I asked how you're doing. We didn't bring up Johnny. We can talk about Johnny, later. Like how families and loved ones are so attached, and they're nonstop thinking about Johnny, Sally, whatever, is he eating well, whatever it is. So it's getting in that mind frame, and what does that detachment look like?
Oh goodness. So I mean, obviously that's something I deal with almost. I mean, literally multiple times a day. Um, well, I turn it into a little bit of a game. Like I tease them, and I'll say, "So, how are you doing?" And they'll launch into, "Well, the last time I talked to him, blah blah blah." I'm like, and then I'll let them finish. I said, "Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question again." And generally, the spouse starts laughing because they're like, "I saw it," And I'm like, "How are you doing?" Oh, oh, I'm good. If he's good, I'm like, "No, that's not the goal." I said, "But you believe me if I told you there's a way for you to be okay, even if he's not." And I just put it on the table, and of course they're like, "Well, I don't know." I mean, let's be honest, it's the mom, you know, and you're like, "Well, you don't understand what it's like to be a mom." I'm like, I understand what you're saying. He's 35. You don't get to play that card anymore, you know? And they're like, well, yeah. I mean, I had that this week, right? And really nice lady. I really enjoy talking to her, but I said, you don't get to play that card. He's an adult, And I said, what is it that scares you about taking your hands off and allowing him to solve his own problems and deal with his own stuff? And then we kind of push down into that conversation, and getting them to sort of acknowledge that and see that and have that It's so huge. I mean, it's just so massive for them to be able to be like, yeah, okay. And I don't slap their wrist. I don't get up. I don't pin them up against the wall. I'm like, I totally get what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. And I remember being in the exact same space with my mom. I said, but eventually you're going to have to start living your own life. And I mean, I had this really lovely couple last year from Louisiana, and the kid was 18, and mom was like, well, Kevin, you just don't understand my mama heart. And I was like, oh no, I completely understand your mama heart, but your mama heart is going to contribute to his death. She's like, what do you mean? I said, you keep covering things up and solving problems and giving him a soft landing, and what does he do? Goes out and overdoses again. I said, so how about we start having him feel some consequences, and take some accountability. You can still love him and you can still buy him all the toys you want. Oh, it's fine. I don't give a shit. But you got to let him start to suffer. And that was the big piece. And she, after our 90-day engagement at Jaywalker, she was like, when I first met you, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I told my husband, I don't like him. And then I really got to know you. And she's like, I realized you really have my best interest and my son's at heart. And I said, well, the thing you got to remember, and I'll finish with this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I mean. By the way, John Lieberman, love that guy, and love his program too. The thing you got, oh man, of course, it just popped right out of my head. I'm old, baby. I know I was going somewhere brilliant too. I mean, just somewhere absolutely brilliant with that.
Well, I mean, I think you raised, hopefully you can revive it. So I'll just say, I think, not being a parent myself, but being, working with, parents nonstop. I mean, especially that mom I'm his mom. Like, this is my job, is to protect him. And so I think there's this gap between protecting and enabling, obviously, and how do you get mom, dad, whoever it may be, to have do you have to like redefine what it is to be a mom in a sense?
More like, yeah. But kind of how I go about it is saying, hey, he's 25. He doesn't need 12-year-old mom. He needs 25-year-old mom, and 25-year-old mom is more of a consultant, not a manager. I mean, one of my favorite phrases to use with these folks is, "I'm going to get you out of the J management business."
Yeah,
it's not working. Come on, how's it been going?
I used that last week, by the way. So kudos to Kevin.
Send me a check.
The nickel's on its way.
Yeah. Oh, goody. So yeah, but I mean, that's what it is. It's just, you got to let them play it out in their own head. And it's like, look, I get where you're coming from, and I completely understand, and I agree. However, it's just like talking to the addict or the alcoholic. How is your way working? Here we are at treatment number 9, so how about we try things differently? How about we do things differently? And we tell them, I love you, but I'm not participating in this process anymore. And see what happens, and see what kind of change that creates, because that's what we got to do. But anyway, I can go on and on.
My mind goes to, like, I can only imagine how quickly it is. Because they've been using it for X number of years. Like, it's almost like the addict alcoholic going right back to their drug of no choice. When things get tough, they know that this is their outlet. Well, may not work anymore, but they still believe it. And so I think it's good to hear, and they may go on for a week or something, but how tough it is to continue healthy boundaries and a redefined communication style, and not stepping in at the sight of if he stubs his toe or something. But I can only imagine how tough it is to keep going back to the healthy ways that you outline instead of what they've been doing for X number of years.
Exactly. And you have to, I got to tell you, it's very much like sponsoring an alcoholic or an addict. you can't shame them, and you can't smack them. You got to be like, okay, sure. So tell me how what happened, and where'd that, and how did that work? And you're like, they're like, well, it didn't. I'm like, okay, well, let's try a different system and see what happens, and we'll just go from there. And I know it's going to make you feel really uncomfortable, because at the end of the day, you're going to figure out that I'm trying to put you out of a job.
Yeah.
And I said, but actually, we're going to replace that with you taking care of you and practicing more self-care. And that always freaks them out, because, and now we're talking about going to adult children of alcoholics.
Yeah. Well, and we can flip this on its head and say, like, how damaging it is, or the same kind of, you have an overly engaged, like, spouse or parent or whatever it may be, after they've had 1 year, or approaching 1 year sobriety. Like, you have someone that's in recovery, but then that nosy mom or the spouse or anything like that, and how that can damage their own recovery, and all the hard work that's been put in by both sides can easily be thrown out, because that could overwhelm an addict alcoholic early in recovery, and we know how that ends. So, like, ending this, my mind just goes to the earlier they can stop doing that, whether it's in treatment, that's going to have prolonged success if they get into recovery, because recovery is not you don't need an over analytical spouse, or a mom or dad. You talk about a sponsor, you talk about, like, we can get into the recovery tools that you and I both have used, and it's not leaning on loved ones, it's leaning on the recovery tools set forth. And they can go back to, I always say, like, the biggest point in my recovery is when I can look at it and say, my mom went back to being my mom, my dad went back to being my dad, and so forth. They're there for support. But in a lot of areas, like, they leave me alone, and when I stub my toe, they're there to support and guide, but they're not here, they're not flying to put a Band-Aid on that toe.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's really what and here's the thing, and I think you and I can speak to this because of our own personal experience. As much as it pissed me off when I first got sober that my parents were like, they could have just written a check, solved all the problems, and they were like, oh no, we ain't doing none of that. I mean, I had a car repossessed. I mean, I was living on a thin budget for couple of years there. I mean, really thin. And but that's where I learned. I learned how to be responsible to a budget. I learned how to be responsible to a job. I learned how to take responsibility for myself and do things that had been taken care of by the system. And like, when I bought a car, back then when I was 3 years sober and I bought a Ford Ranger and my dad co-signed with me, he was like, hey, let's take a look at this, because I think you need to be understanding. It's not just the car payment. It's the car payment, it's insurance, it's gas, and it's the occasional repair. He goes, so I don't want you to be like, oh, I'm paying $300 a month on the car payment. No, you're paying about $400 to $500 a month. Can you afford that?
Yeah.
And that was a great lesson, man. That was a great lesson that I had to learn, because he was like, I'm not bailing you out. That's not going to happen. If we want you to come home for a holiday, we'll pay for the ticket. Yeah. No problem. Happy to do it. We would do that anyway, but we're not doing, there's no more free rides. Oh, and here's the piece I knew if I kept you talking. Boom. One of the things that families don't understand is that when you're doing all that stuff, you're not allowing them to learn how to solve their own problems. Number one. Number two, you're sending them an indirect message that I don't think you're capable.
Yeah.
And that they receive that. That's all shame. And now I know the parents are like, oh, that's not. I'm like, I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose. But when you are constantly solving the problems and bailing them out, they start to see it as, I'm such a screw up.
Yeah.
I'm such the family loser that mom and dad always have to swoop in. And the best thing my parents did was not swoop in and allow me to fight the battle and get out of it. And it took a long time, but that's the best thing they could have done for me.
Well, I
I
mean,
knew I'd
and
get
then
it.
you come to, and I'll just admit, like I had families that swooped in, and my rock bottom was covered with pillows, thanks to my loved ones, and that's just how that's how I got sober, and like, and I'm sure that they were told numerous times they'll leave me in jail or don't get me that expensive lawyer or whatever it may be. Heck, I just went on a business trip last week and found out that I guess there was a rental car company that I've never used, obviously, for who knows how long, since addiction, and they refused to rent to me, and they didn't really have any info or anything like that. Turns out it was a financial thing from like 1999 or something and it was active addiction, and you know I went on a little spiel, but I mean, and then to go through that process, which is this morning and all of Friday basically, and get to the root of it and find out what I owe and make it right, which recovery taught me. But there was a time when I knew things were really, really rough, I would just raise my hand, call it quits, and have mom and dad come in and just save me. Like I didn't, like, people are like, well, try to get out of it. And I never came out and said it, but what I was thinking is, why would I do that? I got mom and dad that are always going, and I always end up better than if I would ever, and I never went through any of that. And so, when you were talking, I was like, I should have just called my dad about this rental, like after, since 90, for a while, that was the old Jay, like, oh, you can't rent to me? Wait until my dad hears about, or whatever it is. And you were talking about, to sum this up, was, you have people rescuing you or whatever, enabling, whatever you want to label it.
Mm-hmm.
I know from my standpoint, I just never really even wanted to fight because I always knew that I would be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that was damaging.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and by the way, we see this all the time with this generation of kids in general, where, the parents have really been snowplowing for them, and just, I call them Zamboni parents. So smoothing everything out, everything's okay. And then the kid gets to the slightest bump in life and they're like, bah! I don't know what to do. It's like, sit down, figure it out. You're smart. You went to school, and they don't have that problem solving skill. And that's the slightest challenge they melt. And I'm not being like, these kids today, let me tell you, it's no, I mean, you and I see this all the time in our jobs. It's like, because what they're used to is like, ow, I stubbed my toe, and everybody comes running.
Well, I mean, for me though, I interrupted, but I mean, every family is like, well, what? I don't want him to have a criminal record. I don't want him to have bad credit. I don't want him to, and I can tell you, like, if you have a bad criminal record, get into the addiction treatment after you get 2+ years sober. But I've never really, like, anytime I've applied for a job and they're like, well, I've got several DUIs and drug charge, and I'm talking to a treatment center, they're like, yeah, that's normal. But I can only imagine in Fortune 500. But and then the bad credit, I'm 48 years old. There's still, like, I'm still have small minimum credit cards that I'm working my, paying off, like I was taught to improve credit. But that it's made me stronger too. I mean, so yeah, I think there's a line. Every family's like, what am I supposed to do? Allow him to get arrested, allow him to, whatever. And they're scared of the checkered credit or criminal or something. And I don't know where you do and where you step in or anything. Like, again, my parents always tried to save, but I will say, through my growth, dealing with bad credit, dealing with financial amends, dealing with, a checkered past on the criminal record, it still comes up in my insurance renewals. And I mean, like, thankfully it's been, 17+ years, but I have to deal with that, and I have no one else to blame but myself. And I think families really want to chime in. Well, I'm not going to allow them to have a criminal record or check, credit, and we can get into the whole that. But there's also something about standing on your own 2 feet and redoing the past bad credit and so forth. So I think parents are really reluctant to have a checkered on their past, and they're trying to save them. So.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, I get that all the time. And my position is, hey, you know what? I mean, I had bad credit when I came in here, and I have a house, and I have cars and credit cards, and it just takes time, and you can't, you can't shortcut the process, and then as far as the criminal stuff, it's like, well, I mean, did he do it? I mean, that's kind of how the reality in life works. And let me tell you, I know plenty of people that have have criminal records, and I mean, some of them have like prison criminal records, and they are doing just fine, because they've turned things around, and I mean, I'm talking about suburban housewives, bro. I'm talking about people that got caught driving their kids to school drunk and had to spend time in the clink, and that's no misdemeanor. That's hard felony, and they're doing just great because they dug in and got it together, and sometimes that's what has to happen, you know?
Well, along those lines, I mean, it was a month ago, I started working with a family, and I just always knew something wasn't being talked about. And it took a couple of weeks. And finally, I was like, there's something not being talked about. And it turns out that the mom went to jail for, I think, 2 months or whatever it was, and is still, I think, on probation or getting off of it because she got caught basically prescription. She didn't really get, I mean, they had a party, their kid had a party, and they got busted for prescription, there's drugs and alcohol, and she ended up doing and it's on her record, and this was went to go find, sat in their living room, and this is, you'd never guess that, mom has been spending time in 2 months in jail or something. And it's just another reminder, because we talked about this. I mean, how normal it's now becoming for parents to start throwing graduation parties and stuff like that with open, I saw it firsthand, and a mom went to jail because of it. So there was no death or anything like that. It was just, but it would have been a lot more than 2 months if there was a death associated. But, and that kind of just goes, is connected with being the cool mom and trying to rescue and so forth like that. I guarantee you, mom and dad didn't come up to Johnny and say, hey, Friday night, let's throw a rager. I'm sure it was Johnny approaching mom and dad and then saying, I'm assuming, well, if you're going to do it here in our house so we can watch you. And then lo and behold. So. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, there was actually my, one of my nieces in Boulder, Colorado had that situation. I mean, not her, but in that year, there was a real big deal where there was deaths, and like the parents, I mean, they all got interviewed and they were coming after them all. And I think I'm pretty sure there was some people got in a lot of trouble. And, it's like, well, yeah, what did you think, bro? I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
That's, you can't facilitate that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we're going to, there was one question that's been a couple of weeks, and I mean, in general, it's along the same lines. It got my mind spinning and so forth. I think we touched on a lot of it, but boiling it down, they're wanting to know, there's a laundry list of things. He's 2 years sober. It's a wife, I think, and ultimately he's like, how do I deal with the fact that sobriety doesn't fix the communications, issues, the whatever it may be. I think there may be a belief that sobriety, he's sober, he's in recovery, that's going to fix all of our issues, and that's not the case, right?
I wish.
Yeah,
I wish.
I mean, it would, meetings would be a lot bigger if it fixed everything.
Damn, baby. I'd be out of a job, by the way. And so I mean, I totally understand where she's coming from. I thought this was going to fix everything. Yeah, I hear that all the time. But so let's take a look at the 12 steps. The first half of the first step says we were powerless over alcohol. We never talk about alcohol or drugs again. So what are we going to talk about in the 11 and a half steps after that? We're going to talk about them and the change that has to occur and the lifestyle change that has to occur that they have to go through. And that's what she needs to understand, is that getting rid of the drugs and the alcohol is great. It's fantastic. But the real work starts after that. You know, I share this in AA meetings all the time. Turns out getting clean was the easy part.
Yeah.
You know, living a different way of life is really hard, you know, and that's okay. That's what we have each other for. And I'm not, by the way, I want to make sure that she understands I'm not giving him a free pass.
Yeah.
You know, he has to be fully accountable, but so do you.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be doing your stuff. And if he's not following through and the relationship's not getting better, you need to see a licensed marriage and family therapist, you know, and say these things like, I love you and I'm glad you're sober, but our relationship isn't better. And it's really frustrating to me. And I want things to be different, you know. Don't go in blaming. Let's just, that's part. I mean, if when I see couples and one person comes in with a laundry list of here's all the stupid stuff you've done and how horrible you are, I'm like, okay, so I get it. That may all be true. However, let's take a look at this dynamic where you're treating him like a child that got caught with his hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not,
yeah. Well, how often do families come with that same laundry list to family programs?
Oh, every time they think we're, well, it's really funny.
Exactly.
Yeah. At Jaywalker, you know, I've made it specific, like explicitly clear.
Yep.
We are not doing that. We are not doing sit down, not, you know, there's no cage match therapy going on. You know, this is going to be, we're going to reestablish the fact that we actually like each other.
Yep.
And then we'll start having that conversation. But we're going to do it differently. You know, we're going to follow some different principles. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Back in Dallas, I know several married, you know, I go to a men's group and, you know, within that men's group, they started a group with their wives and stuff. And it's not necessarily like an AA meeting or anything like that. It's, you know, at least one person in the couple's in AA and they kind of just meet. They met on a regular basis, weekly basis. And they talked about coupling, not couples counseling, what you're saying, but yeah, never once have I gone to a couple counseling AA meeting or anything like that. So, I mean, the communication style, it's, you know, AA solves a lot, throws a mirror up to you and shows you how you're showing up. And, you know, you need to be held accountable how you're showing up, but it's not going to, I still don't communicate well with family and some people, others. I still, you know, overspend. I still, you know, think about myself 97% of the day, which is a great day. If it's, you know, if I'm thinking about others 3%, that's a great day in my opinion.
I was going to say only 97. Fuck, that's progress.
Well, I'll give myself, you know, credit. You know, like, I didn't think you were going to call me out on it, but you know,
a couple extra points.
You know, an average day is 99.8%. You know, if I'm being honest, but no, I mean, these are. I love talking about this because I think it's, you know, sometimes we kind of skate over the fact that, you know, recovery, sobriety doesn't cure everything. And, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, their roles have been defined, loving an addict or raising an addict alcoholic, where they feel the need to go rescue or, you know, make sure that no one stubs their toe. And there's a lot of growth within, dealing with some of the past. I mean, that's what the 12 steps, you know, deals with, is you go back in your past and you make it right. You keep your side of the street and ongoing. It's not just the past. And then you can be, you know, same person moving forward. I mean, there's daily inventories, there's, you know, whatever. And so my job on a daily basis to keep my side of the street clean as best as, not other people, you know, and when it's dirty, you know, clean up immediately and not just wait for, you know, mom or dad to come, you know, rescue it like I always did, or procrastinate. I'll do that next week. Do it immediately. So
yeah. Oh yeah. No. I mean, yeah, totally. I get it.
Well, I don't know if anyone else is going to get anything out of this, but I certainly got energized, and it's, I mean, it just, like I said, like this is, I think, one major reason why I love doing these kinds and just having conversations in general is the family component into recovery is, you know, people don't think about it, you know, and it's huge. It could
Oh,
make it could make the difference between you relapse and success. So
it does make the difference.
yeah.
I mean, it just does. You know, that there's just that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
Kevin. You can clock out for the rest of the day. You brought it
Well,
this week, so
my day's just getting started, brother.
I'll call your bosses. I'll call your bosses, and I'll write you the note. So I
All
appreciate it,
right.
and we're gonna take next week off. I would assume for Thanksgiving, but we'll be here in 2 weeks. Keep the
Yes,
questions
sir.
coming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the deal. Talk to you later. Happy
All right, I'll
Thanksgiving.
see you.
Okay.